Welcome to Disturbing Books for Disturbed Readers, your new favorite way to find the most twisted, depraved, and gruesome reads. Each episode features a to-the-point, spoiler-free review of one of my top picks. If you find that we have similar tastes, then come along. Let's find a new story
to give you nightmares.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back, and today we are talking Along the River of Flesh. If you don't know, this is the sequel to Kristopher Triana's Gone to See the River Man, which was a personal favorite of mine. That said, be forewarned, there will be spoilers for Gone to See the River Man in this review. This is a spoiler-free podcast, but when we're talking about a sequel here, we're going to have to mention a couple things from the original. So if you don't want Gone to See the River Man spoiled for you, go ahead and save this one for later. Otherwise, let's get into it. So this one picks up pretty much exactly where Gone to See the River Man left off. Edmund is on the loose, and now he's heading up the river to make another deal with the Riverman. Thanks a lot, Lori. Meanwhile, the detective that previously arrested Edmund, a private investigator looking for a missing girl, and a teen runaway all cross paths, and while searching for Edmund, head down the same river. Along the River of Flesh is actually how I first discovered Kristopher Triana. Whenever this book came out, I saw a lot of buzz about it, and a lot of people talking about it, and heard very good things, and naturally, I had to go back and read Gone to See the River Man. If you listen to my episode on that one, you know I fell in love with that one. That continues to be one of my absolute favorite books, and Kristopher Triana continues to be one of my favorite authors. So I was very excited to finally get the chance to read Along the River of Flesh. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. Naturally, there are a lot of similarities with the original. I can go ahead and tell you now, if you've read Gone to See the River Man and you liked it, you'll like this one. The vibes are similar. The setting is almost entirely the same. It's mostly the trek down the river again. For some people to find Edmund and for Edmund to see the Riverman, there's some references to characters from the original. If you don't read these back to back, it is kind of fun to revisit some of these places and some of these previous characters. Now that said, another thing I would go ahead and put up front is a content warning for everything. This is Splatterpunk, this is Triana. This shouldn't be a big surprise, but there is one pretty heavy topic that comes up and gets detailed quite a bit. I don't like to say what triggers or content are in things because I think that's a bit of a spoiler. But if there is something that you are concerned about, I would look into it, maybe check out Storygraph and see if it's in here, because it probably is. So overall, to me, Gone to See the Riverman felt like the entire story was a slow build to Edmund's release. You knew that's ultimately where we were trying to get to, and everything was leading to that point. You didn't know what would happen along the way or how we would get there or if we would get there, but you knew that was ultimately where we were trying to go until this animal was finally let out of its cage. This book, it feels very different in some ways, but it does have a very similar tension throughout it as you build to the inevitable. You know where we're all heading. It says it on the back of the book. We're all heading to the same place, and you know, well, you don't know everybody's going to get there, but you know something's going to happen when we reach that point. As always, one of my very favorite things about Kristopher Triana is his ability to drip feed information about characters throughout the story. This was one of my favorite things about Gone to See the River Man, and it ended up being one of my favorite things about this book as well. A lot of it felt a bit more surface level. We're quickly introduced to a couple of our main protagonists, and you get a good background right off the bat. So it kind of felt like that was a little bit cut and dry. Surely there will be something else. And there were other things. I did not expect the amount of things and when things would be revealed. If you read Gone to See the Riverman, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Every time you think you know everything about a character, another bombshell drops, and each one is bigger than the last. Ultimately, all of this culminated in one of the biggest oh shit moments of all time, in my opinion. I will not say more than that about it because I'm very strict about being spoiler free. But the last, I don't even know if it was a full quarter of the book, but the last few chapters, man, you will be flying through them. I can tell you that much. My jaw dropped multiple times and I literally could not put it down for probably the last 20 pages or so. One interesting thing about this story is Edmund isn't this guy in the background anymore. This is told from the perspective of, it kind of rotates through our three main protagonists and also Edmund. So that previous element with the three protagonists rotating perspectives, I always enjoy that in a book. I love whenever it bounces back and forth and you can kind of get inside each person's head and get their perspective on a situation, what they're thinking. I already love that. But having Edmund be one of the people that we're following made this a lot different. It gave us a lot more insight into him. We got a lot of backstory for him. We learned about some of the influences that helped shape him into who he is now. We learned more about his history. We were with him while he was making decisions and encountering people and having conversations. And ironically, it actually made him feel more human instead of just this distant monster. In Gone to See the Riverman, he felt like an entity. We only interacted with him through his letters. We only heard people talk about him, heard stories on the news. So where we got such a more close, upfront, personal view of him this time, he felt more like a human. Now, an evil human, a human monster, sure, this does not make you feel more sympathetic towards him. Don't get me wrong here. But it was an interesting element, I thought. For me personally, I ended the book with a slightly different outlook on Edmund. I just felt that I knew him better. Once again, that doesn't mean I like him more or that I have sympathy for him or anything like that. But I really like that Triana brought him to the foreground of this one and let us get to know him a little bit better. So overall, if you're a Triana fan, if you're going to see the Riverman fan, if you're a Splatterpunk fan, read this. But obviously, read Gone to See the Riverman first if you have not. Honestly, you could read this book without it, but you will be much more heavily rewarded if you start there. They're both short. They're both around 200 pages. I think they may both be just shy of it. So for some people, you can knock them both out in a day or two. For me, it takes a little bit longer than that, but absolutely recommend. You probably already know whether or not you like this book, but it's another 5-star for me. Another top one. Gone to See the Riverman was, I think, fantastic on its own. It did not require a sequel, but this sequel served a very solid purpose as well. It expanded the world more, added new characters, and it wasn't just for nothing, you know? Sometimes sequels kind of just feel like they exist just to exist, and this one certainly wasn't that. It wasn't necessary, but it was certainly a welcome addition. So that's it for my review of Along the River of Flesh by Kristopher Triana. I did also want to mention The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, just released on June 25th. If you have not heard my review of that one, it'll be linked in the description of this episode. And if you have heard it, it's out now. It's available to everybody. I highly recommend that book. Absolutely loved it. It's not quite in the line of splatterpunk, but if you're into dark, if you're into disturbing, if you're into gruesome, messed up horror, I think you'll like it. So that's all I've got for you today. I don't know when I'll have another episode, but the next time I have a fantastic recommendation for you, I will be back to let you know. In the meantime, let me know what you think. Did you like this episode? Did you like any other episodes? Is there something you would like to hear me talk about? Do you have book recommendations for me? I'm open to any and all suggestions, and I greatly appreciate your feedback. I've considered slightly broadening my horizons past just 5-star, super disturbing books, but that is kind of the whole point of this, is that's what I recommend. So let me know what you think about that. Would you rather hear some of the ones that missed the mark a little bit, like my honorable mentions episode? Would you like to hear about ones that maybe aren't quite disturbing enough, but are still 5 stars? I don't know. I'm open to whatever. If you want more content from me, I would love to figure out some extra episode formats so I could make some more recommendations and get some more reviews out to you guys. As always, links to where you can find this book are in the description, and I will see you soon.